welcome back to the Broadside Podcast. I'm Andy Elliott, and with spring just around the corner, I wanted to sit down with Justin Dorr and talk turkey. He has some tales from those turkey trails, one of those being the ridiculous season back in 2020, where he accomplished the Washington Slam and 2 Royal Slams. He's currently working on the Super Slam, which is harvesting a turkey in 49 states with huntable populations of turkeys. So thanks for joining us.
I guess I'd like to just go ahead and start by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself.
I am Justin Dorr, and I guess, grew up kind of lower valley in eastern Washington, Sunnyside. Grew up a farm kid originally, and then decided that farming wasn't for me, so got into construction. And I'm an old timer now, so I'll spare you all the early details. But for the last 20 years, I've been in commercial construction predominantly, building lots of dairies, wineries, apple packing warehouses, all that kind of stuff. And a couple of years ago, started my own business, which has been quite a venture, but really enjoying it so far, and see where it leads to.
So when I met you, and we've probably known each other for 6-7 years, 8 years maybe, something like that.
Yeah, probably right in that neighborhood. Yeah.
I didn't know, but you were big into turkey hunting then, and I always knew you as just the duck guru and the waterfowl guy. So how was your turkey hunting passion back then compared to your duck hunting passion?
Oh boy, I tell you, the duck world for me was, everything. And when I get into something, I'm into it 100%. I didn't want to just go get a duck. I wanted to get all the ducks, And so when I started turkey hunting in 95, so my 30th anniversary is coming up here pretty soon. And so literally just a couple years after I got married, I started turkey hunting. And it was, not something handed down to me by, family members. Really no one in my family hunted. I was kind of introduced to it by my brother-in-law originally as a kid. And anyhow, I started turkey hunting in 95. I didn't know anything about it. And I had one of my duck buddies read an article in like the Hunting and Fishing News or something back then that there was this, Washington had this turkey season. And we're like, oh, well, let's go check it out. It gives us something to do in April. These are like the worst months of our lives, or, after duck season ends at the end of January, you've got February, March, April, just suck, right? There's just, what are you going to do? You're going to hike and, all that kind of stuff, fishing and, all the other things that we do. But we ended up down along the Tucannon River, and I'll never forget this. So we're driving an old Chevy S10 Blazer, my buddy's rig, and driving along the Tucannon River, and we spot these birds out in this field, and we're like, hey, is that them? Like, is that this turkey thing? So we pull over and get the binoculars out, and sure enough, there's some turkeys standing out there. We didn't have a clue if they were male, if they were female. Didn't know the first thing about them. And so, that was a couple weeks before the season started, and so at that time, you couldn't even go to a local sporting goods store and buy a turkey call. Like, you couldn't go to Bi-Mart like we can today, and there's, decent selection of stuff to go buy. I ordered a Lynch's foolproof box call, and anyhow, kind of played with it a little bit, and off we went. So I was successful that season. Shot a Jake, was my very first turkey, and we worked our butts off to make that happen. And luckily in those days, there really was not many turkey hunters. And, most of the people that we talked to in that neck of the woods was like, hey man, knock yourself out, go have fun. And so permission was really easy to come by on private ground. Public ground, there was really nobody hunting turkeys. We could have been super successful if we had any idea how to get this game done. It was pathetic to, the way I hunt today, the way we started was hilarious, but we had to figure it out on our own, and there's a lot of people that, they're third, fourth generation, turkey hunters. These kids learned from grandpa, and I didn't have that. So Yeah, over the years, I mean, obviously we've progressed a bunch, but I have been enamored with turkeys since the very first time that I saw them, and obviously the first time that I actually heard one gobble. And, since that time, I mean, I've just been gangbusters for it. And it's one of those things like, it's just like the duck world, you just don't advertise it. Like you don't tell
Yeah.
anybody what you're doing or where you're going or how
Yeah.
you're doing because frankly, you're selfish. Like you want to keep it to yourself. And I have for a lot of years helped a lot of people in the turkey world and, got their start in the turkey world. And, now it's, out of all the things I do in the archery hunting and whatnot, it is by far and away my most favorite critter to go chase.
Yeah. So I read your story, the ridiculous season. That was pretty crazy. You got the single season Royal Slam, and all done in the United States during COVID, right? So
It was it was an adventure like you can't imagine.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. If you want to, I mean, summarize kind of what that is, and maybe later on I can post the whole story if you'd like on a website, and because I enjoyed the shit out of reading it.
oh,
And
did you? Well,
yeah,
fantastic,
yeah,
man. No, that's good. Yeah, I for years, for 20 whatever 4 or 5 years, I was satisfied, frankly, with hunting just in Washington State. And I ventured into Idaho a little bit, Montana, Oregon, turkey hunting, but pretty much stuck around right here. And the reason I was able to fulfill my drive to turkey hunt was because I just took everybody I could. I would start with the youth season and taking kids out. And for a while it was kind of a joke. It was the rent-a-kid season. Like it was an excuse, literally, to go spend a couple more days in the woods.
yeah,
And granted, I mean, I enjoyed taking the kids and teaching them things and all that kind of stuff. But I would go from that to helping buddies, helping coworkers, friends, my family, my own kids, obviously, my wife hunts, um, and I was okay with doing that. And then in the fall of 19, I drew an Arizona Gould's tag. And with that tag, I kind of decided like, yeah, I've got a chance to do, something pretty cool here. Let's do a Royal Slam, And there's multiple slams in the turkey world. The most common is probably a Grand Slam, which has taken 4 subspecies of turkeys, which is a Rio Grande, the Merriam, Osceola, and an Eastern. And then the next step up from there is the Royal, which is those 4 subspecies plus a Gould's turkey. And typically, Gould's turkeys are taken in Mexico. And an Arizona Gould's tag is just super hard to come by. Like, it just doesn't happen, especially as a non-resident. So a little bit of karma was involved there, drawing that tag, because I had just recently, the couple springs before, had gone to Arizona and helped my good buddy and all 3 of his family members, his wife and both his sons, had all drawn tags within a couple years. And the boys didn't draw them because they didn't have enough points. But in Arizona, you can be gifted a tag by immediate family members. So like grandpa can draw the tag with 25 years worth of putting in, and he can hand it down to his grandson. So anyhow, those guys ended up getting drawn, and they are all accomplished big game hunters. Like they've got some crazy trophies in their house that their state has afforded them, but not so much in the turkey world. So you're like, hey, you want to come down here and help us? And I'm like, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Go play in the Chiricahua Mountains and hunt Gould's turkeys. Yeah, I'm in. So I did that. I traveled down there kind of on my own nickel and helped them. And geez, we had a blast. And hunting Goulds in the Chiricahuas it's incredible. It's beautiful. Nobody ever thinks about being in pine forest in Arizona, but we're hunting 8, 9, 10,000 feet elevation. There was giant pine trees. So super fun. So I think because of that little bit of karma, being the good guy, if you will, the very next year here I am with this tag. So I start, researching, where am I going to find an eastern bird? Obviously Washington has a good population of Rio Grandes and Merriam, so I wasn't terribly concerned about that. I've taken those 2 here, many, many times. And made some contacts in Florida, made some contacts in Georgia and Mississippi, and kind of started to build the plan of what we were going to do and how we were going to go about it to make this happen. And then COVID hit, and suddenly here it is, March of 2020, and things are going really sideways. Like, I had plane tickets bought and all this stuff to travel and go get this wrangled, and suddenly flights are being canceled. No more traveling. There's governors of different states are like, hey, we don't want anybody coming into our state, and we're going to close our borders down, and all this stuff is happening. And so my wife and I decided to bag the flights, and the safest bet for us would be to jump in a car and just make this drive. Which, I mean, if you just think about that, you're going to drive to Georgia.
Yeah, it's fun.
To go on a turkey. So yeah, I'm a nut for it. I mean, what can I say? So, this can be a really long story, but to shorten it up, we ended up making the drive. We drove, I don't remember exactly, 8,000 miles or something in that trip. Hunted multiple states. Worked my tail off. Eastern turkey subspecies ended up being the most difficult bird. They're so stubborn. It's so hard to hunt. I think a lot of it comes from, you get down south, people are turkey hunters there.
Yeah.
And
they're educated.
Oh my God, they're educated, and public ground, really educated. And, I think, the reason I like to turkey hunt anyway is because I like the challenge. They kick your butt on a regular basis all the time. I mean, I don't care how good a caller you are, how good a woodsman you are, they will absolutely whoop your tail. And it doesn't happen every time. I mean, every once in a while you get one of those gimmies where they fly out of the roost and walk up to you and present themselves, But more often than not, you get your butt handed to you, and I like that, so it keeps me coming back. It keeps me striving to get better and, figure it out. So anyhow, after that trip, I was successful. I ended up with a couple of Osceola turkeys. I did get my eastern turkey in Georgia, which was quite an adventure. And came home, and lo and behold, Washington State decides not to open their season for the year. So I'm like, are you just kidding me? I just traveled literally across the country to get a couple legs of this Royal Slam done, and now I'm home, and my home state's not even going to open for two birds that I could easily take. And the Goulds, that was probably my least concern. Like, there was, I'd just been there 2 springs previously. I mean, I literally had roost trees marked on my maps. I that was going to be easy. And so anyhow, so now I start researching, what other states, where else can I get a Rio that might still be open? And one of my buddies called me and said, hey, you can get a Merriam in Idaho, and I heard they're getting ready to close their sales down to non-residents because they don't want anybody traveling into their state. So I get online, get my Idaho tag bought, and literally the next day they shut down their sales to non-residents. And the way they operated that year is if you bought your permits, you could still come and hunt. But if you didn't make that deadline, they didn't want you coming into the state. So I just snuck in there, by the skin of my teeth, and made a fun trip there. Ended up with a couple of Merriam turkeys in Idaho. And then, during that time, obviously, was researching a Rio Grande. Ended up in California for Rio Grande, and which was kind of on our way to Arizona to hunt my Gould's tag, and made a couple of different contacts in California, met some wonderful people in California, and had a little bit of help there on some private ground, and was able to harvest a couple of Rio Grandes in California, and then off we went to Arizona. Well, when I got to Arizona, we were a little bit early. And my good friend there from Arizona, he's really good buddies with Jay Scott. Jay Scott's probably, the premier Gould's turkey guide in Mexico. And Jay called and said, hey man, your buddy I know has this Gould's turkey tag. I know you guys are right down here on the border. He goes, a ton of my clients have bailed out. Like, nobody wants to travel. He's like, I got all these ranches, all these places we can hunt. Do you want to come and play? And I'm like,
yes,
yeah, yeah, sign me up, And so my son was traveling with me. We both had those enhanced driver's license. Obviously, we didn't have a passport. We weren't planning to go to Mexico. But we were able to use those driver's licenses to get across the border, and we had a blast. I mean, it was so fun. I mean, the terrain that we hunted, and the culture that we were in real Mexico. This was no vacation town like going to Cancun. We were in the real deal, and the hunting was spectacular. Jay's a great guy. He's a good turkey hunter. He's a good guide. Very meticulous dude. And we had a blast. So my son and I both ended up taking Goulds in Mexico, which actually, um, would have completed a Royal Slam with that bird in Mexico, but I still had my Goulds tag in Arizona. So
Yeah.
so we left Mexico, went into Arizona, got up into the Chiricahuas, hunted those mountains, got my Goulds turkey. And on the way home from that hunt, I mean, I'd completed a Royal Slam, and there was, it couldn't have happened without the help of buddies and people that I told the story to that were just willing to help. Like, dude, this is really cool. You've got an opportunity to do something pretty neat and complete the Royal Slam in the U.S. That doesn't happen often, or maybe never has.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I get home, and Washington season had opened. And a couple weeks later, or whatever, but they still, I think we still had like 3 weeks of hunting season left, and so it did open, and so I decided, well, might as well, I'm going to get the wife out. We're going to go, chase some birds in Washington, and my good buddy, my wife's cousin that I elk hunt with, lives over on the west side of the mountains, like west of I-5, in the rainforest over there, and he calls me and he goes, hey, he goes. The other day I heard a turkey gobble, and I'm like, oh, did you? he's like, yeah. He goes, I saw one too. Well, he works for the county, for Lewis County, and he's like, yeah. He goes, I think I could probably maybe get you in on this ground. And he goes, there's a bunch of public timber company close by, and I'm like, well, I'd been over there countless times trying to kill an eastern bird in Washington State. It is tough. I mean, tough. There's not many of them. It rains every stinking day over there. The conditions are never good. And if there is a bird, there's 20 guys trying to kill that sucker, and that's what I've experienced in the past. So I'm like, well, I've had one crazy season. I might as well go, give that a shot, what the heck. So I did. I headed over there, and I'll be darned if we didn't, after a couple days get on that bird. And I was able to harvest my first eastern in Washington State. So now I'm like, here I've got, the Royal Slam completed. I just killed an eastern in Washington State. I've got 2 weeks left here. Man, I might as well get the Washington Slam too. Like, I need to go for this, And so I take off and hunted close to home. Ended up with a Merriam. Right after that, I got a phone call from one of my contacts in California, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, I got a buddy of mine that's working on his U.S. Super Slam, and he's going to be in, out in the Northwest, and, is wanting to hunt Washington State. Can you help him? And I'm like, absolutely, help this guy. I mean, they just helped me in California, and, why wouldn't I help his buddy, So I ended up meeting up with him. His name is Mike Tussey, and Mike at the time was on, I think he had completed 20 states, so he was pretty well into his U.S. Super Slam. And anyhow, I caught up with Mike, and we hunted really hard on some public ground, and the birds were tough, and we did a lot of hiking, put a lot of miles on, and Mike finally ended up getting his bird, I think, on the 4th morning. I think he was about to head out, too, and on the last morning got his bird, and he told me, this guy had obviously been hunting turkeys his whole life. He's like, dude, that was the toughest turkey I've ever harvested. That is the most miles I've ever walked ever to get this bird, and I'm just like, yeah, well, welcome to Eastern Washington, buddy. On public ground and late in the season, So anyhow, they of course knew where I was at on the Washington Slam stuff, and they're like, dude, you better get out of here, go get your Rio Grande bird and get this thing done. So I did. I ended up in the Blue Mountains and hunted Rios for several days. My wife and I camped together, and there was just so many hunters still in the woods. We were finding birds, but because the season had opened, so late, that there was still a lot of people out hunting. And typically in our state, early on in the season, the first week or two of the season, there's a lot of people hunting. and then it starts to wane, and you get towards the tail end, and you can hunt a lot of area and never see anybody anymore. Whether their tags are filled or they're just frustrated and had enough of these goofy stinking birds, possibly. I don't know, but that typically is how it goes. Well, that year there was still a lot of people in the woods, so. Anyhow, I got my butt kicked in the blues and didn't harvest a bird. Came home, started researching some more about, how in the heck am I going to get this Rio Grande harvested, and ended up in a whole new area, just from some research. And anyhow, I ended up in a new area, met another great farmer that, I kind of explained to him my story and what I'd been through. And of course, he looked at me like, this guy is a complete freaking lunatic. Like, why did he do all this, to get some turkeys dead? And anyhow, he gave me permission to hunt his place, and then some contacts to hunt the neighboring places, and just super great guy. And finally harvested with like one day in the season left. Finally harvested a Rio. So because of that and the Eastern bird from Washington, I ended up with 2 single season Royal Slams and a Washington State Slam all in one season.
Yeah, so, one of those Royals was purely in the U.S., right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is crazy. So that was kind of the cusp of what it did was, being happy hunting just our state for all those years. What that season did for me was I realized, I could start traveling and hunting other states and, meeting new people, seeing new sites. And it really sparked the, hey, what's the next level here? And, I had made some really good contacts and started to kind of build a network, if you will, of other turkey hunters that were as goofy about it as I was, and met some other guys that were also chasing the U.S. Super Slam. And, from that point on, it's been, I'm giving it all I got. Like, I'm gaining a lot of ground, and, I'm very, very passionate about it. And once I get started on something, here we go. So it may take me, a few more years here to get this done, but, it's going to happen, and it's going to take a boatload of blood, sweat, and tears and perseverance, as you can imagine. I mean, it is not easy to travel to a new state and go find a bird and then harvest him. I mean, it's an undertaking like you can't
it's
imagine.
hard enough to travel to a new spot in your home state.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Did you guys ever consider, like, when you went down to Mexico, and I was reading that like you might not be able to come back because weren't they closing borders and shit?
Oh, it was crazy. I think that Jay obviously has a lot of contacts there. He's guided there for many, many years, and he clearly had some ins with the border people on the way in,
yeah.
And you could kind of tell. We met in Donaldson, Arizona, and transferred a bunch of stuff into Jay's rig, and there was some serious talk about not just our government but Mexico's too, about shutting the border down. Like, nobody in, nobody out, and we're like, okay, we made it across, but we're going to be able to get back. And it was, we were all nervous about it, but hey, it's I had an opportunity to go chase a Gould's turkey in Mexico, so here we go.
Gotta go, yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, you can just climb the wall like everybody else does, right?
yeah, exactly. Then you can get some free stuff too.
Yeah.
So that all took you to what you're doing now, and if you want to go into and explain what Chasing 49 is.
Yeah. So there's kind of two things. So the U.S. Super Slam is the technical term. So I guess there's turkeys, a huntable population of turkeys in 49 states. So Alaska is the only state that doesn't. I don't know if I haven't ever researched Alaska because it's not on the list, but I don't know if there are no turkeys there, or if there just isn't a huntable population. My assumption is there's probably just not a huntable population.
Yeah.
And so you can, there's a huntable population of birds in 49 states. So it's definitely gained some popularity in the last few years to go attempt this thing. And through some of my contacts, matter of fact, the guy that I helped from Florida, Mike Tussey, he had a gentleman named Steven Spurlock that was traveling with him. Steven Spurlock is one of the founders of Chasing 49, and Steven was traveling with Mike to help Mike kind of document his journey. And that's really is kind of part of what Chasing 49 is. So it was founded by Steven Spurlock and Keith Ott. Keith Ott in, I believe it was 2016, started his U.S. Super Slam journey. I think his first state was Nevada. And Steven is a film guy, camera guy. He's an awesome dude to run with. But I mean, that's his thing. He makes killer films. And I think he was with Keith. You know, those two are good friends, and he was with Keith. You know, every step of the way. Keith completed his Super Slam in 2020, I believe, and Arizona was his last state. And so there's some great, you know, you have to get on their website, Chasing 49 website, but there is some awesome videos. They make super good films. I mean, their photography is spectacular. And, you know, it's a brand that those guys have started, you know, because of Keith's journey.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was on there, and I seen they had probably like 6 or 7, 8 videos or something that you can watch there on YouTube.
Yeah, there's some cool ones.
Yeah.
The first one I ever saw was actually in camp of 2020 when I first met Steven. And we're just, you know, chatting about stuff. And he was actually doing some editing and whatnot of Mike's hunts. And we watched a movie called The Doc. And The Doc, I was just like, you know, I don't know that I've ever seen a turkey hunting film put together like that. I mean, the way those guys do their work is you see a lot of, you know, scenery, the travel, you know, the dude staring at the map and, you know, chatting with somebody at the store looking for information and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You don't always see a turkey tip over. You're going to see lots of turkey footage and you're going to see, you know, people calling and, you know, that kind of stuff, but you don't typically see that, you know, in his videos. And that show, The Doc, was, you know, watching that film, it's super cool. You know, that guy in himself, you know, Tom Weddle is his real name, is on, I think he's completed 4 U.S. Super Slams now. I mean, the dude is incredible. He's wrote a few books, which I've read all 3 of them. A new one just came out. And, you know, he is, I mean, absolutely lives and breathes turkey hunting, you know, and pretty cool cat. You know, he's one of those that doesn't, I don't think Doc really cares about, you know, completing the slam or any of that stuff. His first one, I think he did. And, you know, from that point on, he just, you know, likes to travel and hunt turkeys. You know, he wants to be in the woods as much as he possibly can chasing birds, you know. So I think, you know, after Keith completed his slam, you know, they, you know, and I've met those guys. They kind of are, you know, looking to document other people's journey. And just through some of the people that I've met and some of the network and, you know, guys that I've helped and that are their buddies and whatnot, you know, kind of became part of the crew, you know. So 2 years ago, I think it was 21, there was a couple of guys that came out, kid from South Georgia and a guy from Louisiana. And we hunted, I think, 4 states together out west here, you know, kind of helped those guys out. I mean, obviously, they're accomplished turkey hunters. They didn't need me to guide them by any means. Like what I did pretty much was just run with them. You know, I had camping gear and all the goodies to, you know, to hang out. And, you know, of course, there was camera guys that were running with us. And I mean, holy smoke, we had a blast. You know, one of the guys, Hunter Lemoyne from Louisiana, he's won the Louisiana State Turkey Calling Championship. Like, I don't know how many times he's won the state and made it to the Grand Nationals at the NWTF. He'll be there this year competing. And in the senior division, and I mean, the dude speaks turkey. Like, I feel like I'm a decent turkey caller, you know. I've been chasing these things for, you know, 27 years or whatever, but I mean, this guy is actually talking to him, man. I mean, you know, he's communicating with him, and you know, it's pretty amazing to watch. You know, I learned he's a young guy, and I've learned a ton of stuff from him, you know, and it's been, you know, it's been a pretty wild ride. Like, it's neat to be a part of that group, and you know, just going for the slam, like just doing it. You know, I'm 17 states into this thing now in 3 years, and you know, I've got a ton of states on my list to tackle this year, and you know, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. It's coming down the pike here real quick.
Yeah,
you know?
right around the corner.
It is right around the corner. Yeah,
It's got to be a logistical nightmare, right? Like, just getting lined out tags and in all the different states and scheduling all that.
Oh, it would blow your mind to start researching other states compared to what we're used to here.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everything, you know, there are some declining turkey numbers from about, you know, the Midwest on along the East Coast, basically that whole eastern half of the U.S. And because of that, most of those states are being super proactive about, trying to save this resource. And, they're picking on non-resident hunters to start with. There's a lot of states that I can't even hunt in for the first couple weeks of the season. There's a lot of states that, there's no Sunday hunting. There's a lot of states that close at noon every day. You're done hunting at noon or you're done hunting at 1 o'clock. Every state opens at a different time. They're all open for different lengths of time.
Yeah.
I spend countless hours researching and, writing information down and trying to figure out, when you make a swing, is kind of what we call it, a group of states that you're going to go try and tackle. Obviously, you want them to be close together, so you're not, saving time traveling. We want to be hunting, not driving down the road. And when you're doing that, you have to keep in mind that, hey, well, you can't hunt in this state on Sunday. You can only hunt till noon in this place. So then what are we going to do in the afternoon? Well, then you're scouting, and taking a nap because you just drove all night to get to the next state or whatever, And I'm a little bit different in kind of my approach to this thing too. I also want to be a tourist, when I'm in, Massachusetts, I want to go through Boston and see Paul Revere's house,
Yeah.
And I want to go tour, old Ironsides there and, jump on the Constitution and check it out,
You're there,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's some of the regrets that the guys that have accomplished this thing probably have, is the fact that they, were so focused on completing the slam that they skipped a lot of that to get to the next state and get to work on another bird, And so, it may take me another couple of years to kind of approach things that way, but I've also, zipped through a few states and, didn't do the tourist thing either, and I regret that a little bit, but I'm still young enough. I can make it back to those places. That's more than likely. I'm not going to just do this once. I'm going to keep doing it,
Yeah.
So
so I can't remember when I was reading it, where was it that you had to, swim across the river?
Oh, the barefoot gobbler, I think
Yeah.
I called that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in Georgia, and Georgia was a bugger. We had some rough weather, and you can hunt turkeys in the rain. Obviously, you can hunt them in the wind, but what happens is they're not as vocal and they're not enjoying it any more than we are to be out there. So we struggled, and I had some really, really close calls. And I remember we were set up on this kind of little 2-track logging road and had a bird coming, and he was actually in my sight coming down the road, strutting down the road right at me, probably, I bet you he was 80, 90 yards out. And all of a sudden I hear something, and it's a 4-wheeler. 2 4-wheelers, and they come bombing down this road, and it's these 2 teenage girls, and they see me. I'm leaned up against a tree on the kind of on the edge of this road and some tall grass, and they see me and just obviously they spooked the bird flew off, and they see me and just lock up the brakes, and they're sitting there staring at me. Well, I just reached up and kind of motioned to them like, you might as well keep coming and get by me, and so they drove on by, and things like that were happening because kids were out of school. It was, that year was
Gotcha.
COVID.
Yeah.
And, they're out, they were obviously shouldn't have been on that property. They're out trespassing and, kids, whatever, having a good time. But they literally foiled, like, I was going to get that bird.
Yeah.
So that kind of ended that hunt. And we were getting close to where we needed to travel back home. And I had one day to go. And got up in the morning, and it was pouring down rain. I mean, just pouring. And pulled into where, agreed to meet this buddy that was helping me. And we kind of hung out in this old hog barn for a while and just listened to the rain, crashing on the roof. And we had some birds roosted from the night before, so we had a game plan, knew where we wanted to get into. And anyhow, it quit raining, just before daylight, and we got snuck in and got set up on these birds. And they did the same dang thing they'd been doing to us, and they flew out, really didn't pay any attention to my calling or anything else. They had lots of hens with those gobblers, and they just walked away from us. And days before that, they'd just gotten silent, like they just wouldn't talk anymore. Well, I mean, you just can't, it's awful hard to play the game when they don't give up their location and they don't want to come visit you. There's some hens will come and, you can kind of call to a hen and they'll come walking at you, and some hens will turn around and grab their boyfriend and walk away, and this group was, their game plan was to leave, so we lost them, and, I don't know, it was an hour or two or whatever it was later, we spotted these birds in kind of an opening on the other side of this river. And a buddy of mine from northern half of Georgia, he's like, hey man, if we're gonna have any chance of getting these birds, we got to figure out how to get across this river. So I'm like, okay, and so we hiked, I don't know, half a mile and probably more downstream, looking for a tree maybe that'd fallen over the river or whatever, and didn't see anything. Hiked, back up the river looking for a spot, and the water was really, really murky from the storm, like just kind of mud flowing, and this is a pretty good sized, it's no creek, this is a pretty good sized river. And Cody's finally like, dude, we're just gonna have to wade this thing, and I'm like, seriously? And he's like, it's the only bird I know of. We could go hunt,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So I grab a stick there that was 5-6 feet tall, kind of as a wading staff, and I should have taken off some gear and whatnot, but I didn't. I was just hey, we just got to get across this river, and I'm kind of expecting it to be maybe waist deep or something. And so anyhow, I start wading into this thing, and pretty quickly it's over my boots, and pretty soon it's up to my waist, and I kind of reach out with this wading staff, and I'm feeling, and there's no bottom. And I'm like, uh-oh, and I look upstream at Cody, and he's just basically swimming already. And I'm like, well, we're committed, here we go. So my next step, of course, was over my head, and, in I went, and of course the water pushed me downstream probably 20 feet from where I was hoping to climb up on the bank. Well, the bank in that spot was super steep, muddy, nasty roots. Like I'm drowning here. Like I still got my vest on. I've got my binoculars on, my guns, over my shoulder strapped. And I mean, anyhow, I finally get crawl up the bank, and I'm looking at Cody. He's soaking wet. We're just kind of laughing at each other, like, what in the heck, Did we just do that? Yeah, we did. So, I take a few steps to walk over to Cody, and I mean, my boots just sloshed, like, they're full of water. I mean, it was just like sounding like, I mean, there's no way in hell you were going to get close to a turkey sounding like that, So off come my boots and my socks, and, I take my vest off. Every pocket's full of water, and my calls are floating in water. My binoculars are floating in water. I mean, my gun is full of water. Unload that thing, dump the water out of the freaking barrel, and, get the thing loaded back up again, and left a whole pile of gear laying there on the bank. Like I was literally stripped down to nothing, bare feet. Had a diaphragm call in my pocket because I think that was the only thing left that would work. And off we went, and we found those birds, and we knew from we chased these birds for a couple days already, and I knew that calling to them wasn't going to do me any good. I mean, the result that we've got every other time we tried was those hens would just walk away from us and drag a gobbler with them. And so we spotted them out, kind of on the edge of this big opening, and Cody's like, you know what, man? He goes, I'm just going to hang back. He goes, maybe, they seem to be working this direction, and maybe you can just kind of crawl along through the edge of the timber here and see if you can get ahead of them, and, maybe you can just kind of ambush them. Well, it's really not my style, and it's never been my style, and honestly, I'd never ambushed a turkey before in my life. Called every turkey in, that I'd shot. And most people, will kill a turkey any way they can,
Yeah.
And but anyhow, I'm like, this has got to happen. Like, I need to get this eastern done, or else, if I'm not going to make this, slam. And so anyhow, so I crawl along the edge of this opening, and those birds kind of slowly worked their way at me, and I never said a word. I never made a call because I knew it would just alert them to my position, and more than likely they weren't going to buy it, and they were going to walk away, And eventually they got close enough, and I was able to make a shot, and it ended up being a spectacular eastern bird. I mean, this bird was a monster, over a 12-inch beard, almost 2-inch long stinking hooks. I mean, they're huge hooks on this bird. Like, I was shocked when I picked him up, like literally shocked. Like, oh my God, look at these things,
It was worth the swim.
Oh, it was definitely worth the swim. Yeah, absolutely worth the swim. So, Yeah, I shot my very first eastern turkey ever in my bare feet, soaking wet.
Yeah, like God intended.
So yeah, thank goodness, And but yeah, that was a cool hunt. I guess at the end of the day, you're willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
That's what you do. So
Yeah. And back to your earlier, you seem to network really well, and you talked about karma, and I've always known you as a huge helping hand. Like I've run into you out at the range, and you're out there patterning little kids' shotguns for youth turkey season. I've always admired that about you. I think that's an awesome trait, and I think it helps pay off. You've got some pretty cool trips of stories that are pretty awesome. And so, what? I guess where are you going next? What's your plan this year?
well, I'm not going to give up too much
Yeah,
info
yeah.
for where I'm headed, but I am going to start in Hawaii this year, and that's there's no secret. Hawaii is the first state that opens, and so most people that are traveling turkey hunters, probably going to start in Hawaii.
Yeah.
If you're going to looking to extend your season, that's the place to go. Hawaii has Rios, so there's Rio Grande subspecies in Hawaii. Sounds to me like they have a pretty strong population of them. I think they have a strong population of a lot of stuff, hogs and goats and axis deer. And my assumption is, I haven't been to Hawaii yet, but I think most people travel to Hawaii to, hang out on the beach and go surfing, right? It's not a hunting destination. It's a vacation destination. So, yeah, I think the hunting is going to be pretty fair is kind of what I'm hoping for. Yeah, I'm taking my wife and I are going. We're going with another couple, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. So, from that point on, I'm probably going to jump kind of to the Midwest and then work my way up the East Coast. Probably end up in Maine or Michigan, something like that, or kind of the last two states to stay open. Typically, those guys. I think Maine this year is open to June 3rd. And those two states are generally the last to close, so that's probably the place you end up chasing states like that. But I've got I've got plenty of work that I need to do, but I also want to spend as much as I can, as much time as I can in the turkey woods, and I'm really hoping to kind of get up that East Coast. The states are small, and so fairly easy to to jump from state to state in there if you can be successful. And just researching, just the stuff, the history that I've learned about the U.S., trying to chase this lamb. I mean, it's mind-boggling some of the history, back east compared to how young we are out west here.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty neat. It's just things that I didn't pay attention to in school that I know now. I know Rhode Island is super tiny. It's like 1,500 square miles or something. Well, Yakima County that we live in is like 4,500 square miles, or don't quote me on that stuff, but it's considerably larger, 2 or 3 times larger in just our county than that entire state. Yeah. So, and I probably learned that back in like 6th grade or something, but that's been long gone since the day I left that classroom. So,
So with your coming up states, and bring you back to the networking thing, are you kind of flying blind at any of these, or do you gotta have some contacts that you've reached out to already to kind of help you out, or you don't got to give any names or just
yeah, no, for sure. No, I've got plenty of contacts. I'm definitely probably catch up with my buddy from South Georgia, and we ran together last year on a couple of different swings, and we're super successful. We have similar hunting styles. There's a few of us that are kind of chasing this U.S. Slam that all we have similar styles and similar techniques, and we get along well. And so my plan is to drive this year and just have a week or 10 days or whatever. I'm going to catch up with a buddy and try to knock off a couple states with them, and then move on to the next guy. Last year I had a real tough swing and just literally got my butt handed to me in 3 states, and so I'm looking forward to going back there and getting a little revenge.
yeah.
And so I hunted Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama last year, and absolutely got my butt handed to me. So most of that was weather driven. I mean, it was like hurricane, wind, rain, like I've never seen in my life. I mean, you you couldn't get out of the truck for 2 minutes, let alone, jump out in the brush and think you're going to go spend the day calling turkeys, So that's the other caveat is, I mean, you can make all the planning you want and get there and there's a freaking tornado,
Yeah.
So guess we're not hunting today, So yeah, it's, I'm really looking forward to the spring and, I have a pretty good plan in place. I still have a lot of work left to do on where I'm going to go. And, at the end of the day, it's hunting, I mean, good grief, you can allot, 3, 4, 5 days or whatever in a state and never even find a bird, or find one that just isn't receptive, and wants to play the game proper. And for me, I mean, that's, playing the game as proper as you can is important to me. When I was a young man, killing a turkey was killing a turkey. I never shot one out the window of a pickup, but I probably wouldn't have been against it either, back in the day. And, I have no use for any of that kind of stuff anymore. Like, I really enjoy the hunt. I enjoy, getting my butt kicked on a regular basis and, trying to learn, how to turkey hunt. And you're constantly being educated in the woods, and, being a good woodsman, having good woodsmanship is probably, the most important thing about turkey hunting. I mean, you don't have to be a great caller. You don't have to be in the greatest area where there's the most turkey population. What you really need to do is become a better turkey hunter. And, being a better turkey hunter is spending time with the birds and understanding, their behavior and how they roll. I mean, there's an unlimited number of techniques out there for, how to go chase a turkey, and every experience is different, and that's another reason that I'm so enamored with those goofy things, is that every single experience is different. Lots of different tactics you can try, and some work and some don't. And, you can think to yourself, well, man, I just did that. And, that was great. This bird just came and ran me over. Well, you try that again and, turn around and run the other way. So you can never, count on something that's going to work like that. I think, the harder you work at something, obviously the sweeter, it is when you accomplish it. And anymore, it seems like in this world we live in, everyone is trying to make things easier. Everything is easier, easier, easier. What new gadget can I buy that's going to make me go out and, kill a turkey every time I walk out the door? Well, those things don't exist. There's tools that can help you. But, really the key is, woodsmanship, spending time with the turkeys and understanding how to hunt them,
Yeah, enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The springtime is the best time to be outside playing in the woods. Like, it's, the grass is green enough, the wildflowers are blooming, the deer and elk and stuff in our neck of the woods really don't care about you. We see a lot of bears in the springtime, and, all this stuff is, not being hunted, and it's spring, and they're, enjoying all the new growth that's out there. And, it's just it's a great time to be in the woods, and, I mean, since the first time that I turkey hunted years ago, I have been taking, kids every year. I haven't missed a youth season since. So I'm like, 20, whatever, 6 or 7 or whatever number of years now of taking a kid, turkey hunting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And yeah, and it's been, I mean, you can't imagine how rewarding it is to see a kid's eyes, especially a little guy, girl, whatever, that's, 9, 10 years old, the first time they hear a turkey gobble. It's just like, you can just, see it in their face, you can feel it in their body when they're sitting in your lap and that bird first comes into view. They're just shaking.
Yeah.
And some of that is excitement, and some of it is, it's a cold, crisp spring morning, and they're just a little guy sitting there in your lap, holding some big old shotgun that they can barely hold up. And I can't tell you how many times I've literally looked, right over the shoulder of a little girl or boy, and right down their gun barrel at a gobbler. And I mean, that's a pretty wild experience to watch them, squeeze that trigger and for that thing to fall over. I mean, you think that I'm under a lot of pressure, kind of being, their helper. They're under a lot of pressure because, those kids, these days are smart, and they realize that, we put a lot of effort into scouting and getting their little butt there, in the seat and all that kind of stuff. And so they feel a lot of pressure too,
Yeah.
And, I try to teach them that, obviously harvesting a bird is our end goal, but to also enjoy, the whole experience, and, show some respect for that critter. And, we always, take a break and just spend a little bit of time with the bird and check it out and look at the feathers, and play with them. And, hopefully they kind of understand that, it's about being out there in the woods and hearing the songbirds, as the sun comes up in the morning, and, all that kind of stuff that I appreciate about the outdoors is, really the important part of the whole game, So it's been very rewarding, taking kids. And, but the other thing is, with this, now with my new venture, I am becoming a lot more selfish, and I don't know that that's the right word, but, I'm focusing on me more than I ever have. And, it's always been about, kind of sharing experiences with other people. And, I really enjoyed that more than harvesting a bird for myself. And now that I'm on this, adventure, I'm definitely putting a lot more time into me than I ever have, And last year was the first year that I considered not taking a youth. And because I really wanted to be, elsewhere in, Louisiana. And anyhow, I stuck around. I came home and went through the youth season, and we weren't successful last year, which was the first year in a long time that my youth didn't harvest a bird. But we had lots of good opportunity. We had turkeys standing behind us. Like, I don't know why they did that, but they did.
Yeah.
And she couldn't get a shot at them. And but anyhow, we had a really good time. And it was her second year of hunting with me. The year before, she harvested 2 turkeys during the youth weekend. So pretty lucky kid.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of good, when those things happen. We spent a couple days, working really hard all day long trying to get a bird. And she didn't harvest one. I think it was good for her because the first year was maybe a little bit too easy. We just had like the perfect experiences. So. And but it was a good learning lesson for her that you don't just walk out there and make a couple calls and they come walking up to you. So it was fun this year. I don't know. I'm still having a little bit undecided whether I'm going to do it or not, and it's hard for me. It's a lot of it's fun to be able to say that I've done that for so many years. But I don't know how long I'm going to be here. None of us do.
Yeah.
And I've got a pretty hefty goal ahead of me, and I probably should be working on it.
Yeah, it's a big feat to accomplish, and I think you've put plenty of tokens in the karma bucket.
Probably, yeah.
So chasing49.com was the website of that brand.
Yeah, and check it out, man. It's those guys are, what they're doing is so cool. Like, it is some of the neatest videos, And for me, what I get out of it, I mean, I've got some spectacular photos and some spectacular film, and I've met some wonderful people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the stuff that they take, with real cameras versus what we do with our cell phones is just not even. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't even want to take a picture of a turkey with my cell phone anymore. Like, it just doesn't know justice, know. So yeah, no, for sure, check them out. They're great guys, and what they're doing is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I see their Instagram posts, and I think they got a YouTube, Facebook, and a couple other things. And it's like, you can always, it's the first thing, when it pops up, it's like you already know who posted it. Like, I can already tell by the quality of the video, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's those guys again. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess we can wrap up here in a minute, but was there anything else? I mean, anybody you want to shout out that's helped you along the journey, or anything that you want to get out there across the airwaves?
Not necessarily. Definitely shout out to my wife.
Yeah, definitely.
She, good God bless her soul, is totally supported me in, all of my ventures. This is, obviously turkey hunting is, been my passion for a long time, but this is not the only critter that I chase.
Yeah.
And, I spend literally all year doing something, And I think, over the years, obviously she started doing it with me. So, Sarah Lynn's a salmon steelhead fisher. She was a duck hunter when I was chasing ducks, and she turkey hunts with me. She's an archer. We love to hike. We do, mountain climbing, hiking, ride horses, all that stuff. I mean, it's nonstop. Like, I spend every waking moment in the woods that I can, and that's been my lifestyle, like, literally since I was just a little kid. It's just what I do. So
Yeah.
if I was to identify as anything, it would be, an outdoorsman and, for sure a turkey hunter, But yeah, definitely a huge shout out to my family and my wife for supporting me, in this journey. And there's some hardship that's going to come out of this, we've got critters at home and, Sarah Lynn's at home feeding horses, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not there. I'm out running
Just
around.
cussing your name.
Yeah, absolutely she is. But, luckily she's just stinking awesome. So, yeah, we're coming up on our 30th anniversary this summer. And I don't know why, but she's stuck with me the whole time, So I might get home this spring and find all my stuff sitting out in the yard. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I guess check out chasing49.com. I'm going to tag your Instagram as well. I know you're not huge at posting on there, but
I'm learning. I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just say thanks for coming and talking to me. I'm going to get this story on somewhere because I think it's awesome, and I want people to be able to read it if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
And thanks everyone for listening.